Welcome to the Monica Kelly Light Body Podcast. Introducing your host, Monica Kelly.
Hello, this is Monica Kelly, and welcome to my broadcast. This is a 5-part series in which I discuss my background, and I'm putting this out first because I want people to become familiar with who I am and my approach and what I have studied and how I've come to be the person I am today. I have a very interesting background in that it's a combination of Eastern philosophy studied through the practice of yoga and meditation over many, many years, and also Western philosophies and Western psychology and Christianity, which comes in through my upbringing and also my time in graduate school. And then how that's been developing through post-graduate studies in hypnosis, in energy work, and eventually into me becoming a psychic healer and having the ability to connect directly with the astral realm. So this is the first part of that story. And I want to start by talking about the beginning, where I come from. I was born to parents who are both immigrants, and I was a first-generation American growing up in Central California. My father was born in Calcutta, India, and my mother was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And both of them had one thing in common, and that was they were very committed Christians and wanted to minister and study Christianity in the United States. My father was converted at a Billy Graham crusade when he was 18 years old and wrote a letter to the Southern Baptist Convention asking if there was anyone in the United States that might sponsor a young Indian man to come so that he might study at seminary school. And to his surprise, he got a phone call, and it was from the airlines in India, and they said, "There's a ticket here for you." And he didn't really believe it, so he discarded that, and a few weeks passed, and they called again, and they said, "There is a ticket here for you. Are you going to claim this ticket?" So he went to go investigate, and sure enough, a couple from Tennessee had read his article in the Southern Baptist magazine and decided that they would sponsor him and also that they would purchase a ticket for him to come to the United States and study Christianity. Now, at that time, it was not so difficult to come to the United States, so he took advantage of that ticket and he came over. My mom had the same inkling. She was orphaned and grew up by her aunts who took care of her, so she didn't have strong connections. And she also really had a love of Jesus and wanted to go to seminary school. So she had the same idea, and they actually met in college and fell in love, and that's how the story goes. So I grew up in a very strong Christian environment, 3 times a week, with strict rules and a lot of Bible study. And for a very long time was happy in that environment and happy with that grounding in Christianity. It wasn't until I was 18 years old that I left for college, and I found myself in Eugene, Oregon, and I wanted to study something new, and I wanted to be independent. I decided that I would start to study about yoga. I'd always been interested in yoga, and I thought, well, I want to do something that's related to my heritage. And since I was half Indian, I thought I will start practicing or studying yoga. And for the next couple of years, that's what I did. I read books about yoga. I remember reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I remember reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I got a grounding in yoga philosophy. A couple years later, I moved to Seattle, Washington, and I wanted to have a bigger experience, and I wanted to be a musician and an artist and be free for a little while. And I was still interested in practicing yoga, so I met my first yoga teacher, and we became really good friends, and her style of yoga was called Iyengar. So for the next 7 years, I practiced a strong Iyengar practice. And if you don't know much about yoga, it's a focus on form and breathing. But for the most part, it was taught to me primarily as a physical exercise, which is how most yoga is presented today at most yoga studios. Not so much a spiritual exercise, but a physical exercise. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I really wanted something more. And I found the Ananda Yoga community in Seattle, Washington. And I fell in love with the vibration of joy in that community. And I learned all about Paramahansa Yogananda. And I learned about meditation. And I learned about the joy of meditation. And I was really growing in my yoga practice in terms of not just yoga for body movement, but yoga as a process of understanding enlightenment and as a process of really feeling and becoming overwhelmed with joy. After that, I graduated with a BA and I got my first corporate job. Good for me. And I continued my yoga philosophies and my yoga study until such time that I knew I was on the wrong path. So I decided to return home to go to grad school, and I went to California State University, Fresno, which is my hometown, and studied for 4 years a counseling degree, a master's degree in counseling. And through that process of studying to become a marriage and family therapist, I got a really strong, firm understanding of Western psychology, diagnosing, different methods for how Western philosophies view mental illness and how they assess and then how they treat, and just the whole process of being a psychotherapist. So all of that was integrating in my brain. I had, by this time, 10 or 15 years of yoga practice, and now I had also had Western psychology. And it was an interesting process for me because I was feeling like they were so related and yet so completely disconnected. I know that there's some areas where they cross over, like mindfulness or acceptance commitment model or emotional freedom therapy. But for me, I always felt like it should be more than that and it should be deeper than that. Well, after I finally got licensed and was in practice and could finally study what I wanted to study, I had a friend encourage me to study hypnosis with Dolores Cannon. And I remember writing her name down on a Post-it and kind of not thinking about it for a really long time. One day looking up, deciding to search her online. And sure enough, she had a workshop coming up in LA the very next month. And I had this strong desire that I just had to go to this workshop, started pulling together funding to make it happen, and I went. Didn't really know that much about her. Picked up a book, picked up her latest book and read it. And it was transcripts of her hypnosis sessions. And she was doing a type of past life regression and connection to one's higher self. So I was very interested in this whole process. When I went to the workshop, it just about blew my mind. And I was so fortunate to be in one of the last of her classes where I got to actually meet with her and work with her in her level 1 and her level 2 before she just recently passed last year. So I was so grateful for that experience that I got to actually see her give a hypnosis demonstration. When the client went into hypnosis, they were deeply gone. And when they got to the level of their higher self, something amazing happened. And I remember all of this energy came into the room, and everybody who was in audience, there was about 60 people at that workshop, felt it. It was a very real experience chills, and people were crying, and just a real intense feeling. And something magnificent and magical happened. And she really did have that client touch their higher self. And as a result, we were all touched by this magical energy that Dolores was saying was coming directly from God. I remember after that session concluded, I was so overwhelmed and so intense. I remember thinking, I got to walk around the block. I have so much energy. I was exhilarated. That was a profound experience that week. And when I came back, I was very interested in practicing hypnosis and went right to work with finding as many people as possible that were interested in having that experience. And for the next couple of years, I practiced past life regression to the level of your higher self and had many, many amazing and interesting experiences taking people into the astral realm. Now, while this was occurring, at the same time, I was also studying energy work, and I had studied energy work all along, different types of energy healing, Reiki and pranic healing, healing of the hands, reading different books on that subject. And all these years, I'm very interested in the chakras, and I understand the chakras very well and have been talking to people about them for years in my yoga practice. And I started to play with the pendulum. And what I did was I would hold the pendulum up over a person and I would read their chakras. And I started to develop a system where I could tell based on how the pendulum was moving, if the chakra was open, closed, withdrawn, or distressed, or overactive. And I started playing with this and reading a lot of people after yoga class, people that would come to see me in private sessions. And I started to work with this new idea that was developing called negative energy release work, I decided to call it. And the way that came about was one day I had this lady in hypnosis, and she had gone through a past life regression. And I asked her if she saw the light, and she said she did. And I said, well, will you go up into the light so that I could ask to meet with her at the level of her higher self? And she basically said, instead of saying yes, she said, Monica. And she took her hands and she was holding her third chakra. And she said, I'm feeling a really heavy weight here. So she shifted the whole notion of the session, and she was very intense. Well, I became curious. What did that look like? So I immediately grabbed my pendulum and put it over her third chakra. And the pendulum started whipping around, and it was like a tornado going, wow, 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 wow. And I didn't really know what to do at the time. So I was just in disbelief holding the pendulum as it was whipping around. And then all of a sudden there was a moment of intensity, and the pendulum flew off of the chain, literally bent the circle, hit the wall, hit the bed. The client wakes up out of hypnosis and she says, whatever just happened, I'm feeling a lot lighter and a lot better. And that was my entry into clearing the chakras, self-taught. I had similar experiences with people who would come in after that, where I started to notice if I put them into hypnosis and had them expand their energetic body or their auric field, that the chakras would start to open and release negative energy. So all of this stuff was starting to come together and starting to integrate to make me the healer who I was becoming, someone that had a strong religious upbringing and moral grounding in the Christian church, and had studied the Bible a lot, someone that had gone through a tremendous amount of yoga training, physical meditation, and also yoga philosophy. someone that studied Western psychology and now moved into hypnosis and energy healing. And all of that was starting to integrate in my practice in the direction of healing. And that's my background. Now, the story continues on from there, because in the next part, I'm going to talk about what happens next, which is in the process of the 2 or 3 years where I was learning all this information, I was intuitively being guided. I was meditating and receiving messages. But it wasn't until after that something very interesting happened to me that profoundly woke me up and made me the psychic medium that I am today. So keep listening, and on to part 2 of my background. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening. This is Monica Kelly.
Thanks for listening to Monica Kelly Lightbody. For more information on downloads, workshops, and private sessions, please visit www.monicakellylightbody.com.